generative AI has moved, in my opinion, from the last even several months from a wish list would be amazing to be able to add to a component or a delivery to nearing table stakes.
Hello, and welcome to the Media Copilot. It's a podcast that explores how AI is changing media, journalism, and content creation. I'm Pete Paschal, longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, and I'm excited to bring you fascinating conversations with fellow journalists, media executives, and the people building how the business of news will work in the AI future. This week, I'm excited to welcome Traci Mabrey. Traci is the general manager of Factiva, which is a business intelligence service owned by Dow Jones, which is, of course, part of News Corporation. Basically, Factiva looks at all the content out there across all kinds of industries, so you, the subscriber, get only the stuff that's relevant to you and your business. Back in the fall, Factiva launched an AI-powered feature called Smart Summaries, which lets you query the service in natural language and then gives you the key points and relevant sources. Now, that in and of itself is pretty common in AI, but what isn't common is that Factiva has signed licensing agreements with every single one of the 5,000 content providers who are contributing to those summaries. That practice is a big change from the frontier AI companies, which have trained their models on all kinds of internet data solely on the basis that it's publicly available. While the rest of the world waits for the courts to make some kind of ruling on copyright and what it means for publishers, Factiva appears to be in a great position, building its moat through the hard work of persuasion and making sure it has content licenses from the get-go. Now, were some of those publishers harder to convince than others? Yes. And Traci and I get into how Factiva had to educate its various partners. We also talk about copyright, security, hallucinations, and what Google said when Factiva told it wanted to index 3 billion articles for its private cloud. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and if you do, I'd encourage you to share it with a friend or a colleague. And I'd be grateful if you consider subscribing to the Media Copilot newsletter if you haven't already. Links in the show notes. And by the way, I've also announced a second cohort for my AI training course for PR and media professionals. It's a 6-week course filled with lots of hand-on, live instruction on how to use AI tools to automate workflows, craft campaigns, and just work smarter. You can learn more and sign up for the course at MediaCopilot.ai. Okay, here's my conversation with Traci Mabrey, General Manager of Dow Jones Factiva. Traci, welcome to the Media Copilot.
Oh, thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Sure, my pleasure. So I'm excited to hear your perspective on AI, media, copyright, all the things. I know your team at Factiva has been doing some really innovative stuff, and not just with summaries, but with business models and everything that powers what you're doing. But before I get to that, honestly, like a lot of my listeners might not even be all that familiar with Factiva itself. So why don't you give me a quick, really short elevator pitch on what Factiva even does and what is it? What's the content? Who are your customers and competitors, et cetera?
Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity because Factiva has actually been around for 25 years. So it has been a very prolific component of not only the media industry, but for corporations, financial services, and beyond. We are a very robust aggregation and business intelligence platform that brings together thousands of content sources from publications to media to company information to people data. And what we do is we bring that together in a very transparent way in order to serve it up for all sorts of corporate use cases. So we very much are looking at professional environments, businesses, but really at our core is the content that brings Factiva to life. And we've been monetizing content and bringing in licensed content since our inception. So we're really looking forward to this next chapter in our journey.
So would you classify it as kind of a high-end information curator for businesses?
I think that's a lovely way to put it, actually. So I think yes, very much. The curation component is very much part of what we do, and we really focus on multiple corporate use cases. And we focus on it around the world too. So we've got content from 200 different countries. We provide information now in 32 or 33 languages. I might have to check my stat on that one, but yeah, it's a pretty great thing to be able to deliver and a great place to be.
Nice. And you said thousands. Do you have like an actual count on that? Is it like, say, 5,000, 10,000? Are we into five digits here? Can you say?
We are actually in well into the five digits for our content sources globally across what have really been our kind of our heritage use cases. So it's a great robust source.
Nice. And so, I like talking to you, and I think it's a very interesting business to think about with respect to AI. And I know that let's kind of get into that because if you think about the curated set of content like you guys have, as opposed to the entire internet, I think that's almost a more helpful way to think about how to deploy this technology. So tell me first of all, like how are you guys using AI? Obviously, you've been there for a number of years now. I think since 2021, right? So you've had a good time to think about this and figure things out and see the generative AI, well, revolution, I guess, even though it's cliche, sort of come alive and what it means for content. So when it came out, how did you first approach it, and then how did you come to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I love that. It really, it came onto us, I think, like everyone else that's in industries or in our personal lives, right? It really burst onto the market now just about 2 years ago. And as you really think about everything that has happened and continues to happen since that point, it is just the pace of change has just been incredible. And I think that's where we really started out with this, kind of excitement and exhilaration over, this change opportunity. That also certainly comes, I think, from an industry perspective with a bit of anxiety too. Our rules are changing. And the rules are changing not only for content creation, rules are changing for content consumption, rules are changing for content distribution. And as we looked at all of those, we really very quickly approached it as we have from a guidepost basis of our businesses to this point and looking back on other historical changes. One, we are a publisher first. We're a content creator first. So intellectual property and the responsibility of ensuring intellectual property and having a mutual understanding and respect for intellectual property is at the core. Content is the core. Then it leads us into our second guiding principle, which is the fact that Factiva, very specifically as part of Dow Jones, is an arbiter for publishers and media institutions globally. We feel a very deep and purposeful responsibility to behave and be a convening power and a convening body for publishers that have been part of our ecosystem, many for the 25, almost 3 decades that we have been in business. So it's a very critical, juncture to reinforce that, with our intellectual property, content is at the core principle that we need to not only be doing that for our publications that are part of the Dow Jones property institutions, but also at the arbiter level with publishers. And then with those two guiding principles in mind, how do we innovate and how do we not only keep up with the pace of change, but do that with the governance and the ethics that we know to be in place? And when we put all those three together, Pete, what we started out with, I think now, somewhat quietly in the market, is that we erred on the side of speaking to our corpus of publications and of media institutions and of market and reference data providers to say, what are the licensing requirements going forward for generative AI? Knowing even 2 years ago, we didn't know what we didn't know 2 years ago, right? So we were essentially kind of skating to where the puck was going. And we have been having conversations, and this probably seems a bit potentially even dramatic, but we have gone publisher by publisher, title by title, to request
Mm.
additional rights for licensing for Gen AI. And we have been incredibly transparent. We have been very candid. And we have been, along the way, early days, it was a bit of education for some of our publishing counterparties, but we have publications that are from every part of the world. They are big and small. They are broad and narrow. They are niche. They are multiple geography. So we have, wanted to go out to every publication we have, and we have reached out to every publication within our corpus. And we've been
Mhm.
working through and getting those additional rights, literally one institution by one institution.
I want to go over more of that in a second and sort of the conversations you've been having and the sort of copyright implications of them. But let's zoom in really tight right now, okay? Because I want to really understand this as someone, forgive me, but I'm not a subscriber to Factiva, so I don't know quite how it works. So in terms of you're a customer of yours, what you would get prior to this Gen AI sort of layer that you have now is a curated set of info, as well as some, I guess, analysis or summarization that was done by humans prior on your end. Is that fair to say? You get kind of a report and links and essentially a content package depending on what your interest is in terms of the industries. Is that fair? Like, can you elaborate on that? Basically, I want to know exactly what people were getting before, and now what are they getting with AI? Because I really like thinking about the first principles of this, right? Like, if you're someone who basically just wants business intelligence, right? You want the actionable stuff and you want to get there as fast as possible. And so what I sort of as I understand what you're doing is that, okay, before I was getting a good chunk of that filtering and curation done, and I would still need to, as a human, apply some interpretation to that, and even within that, find the actionable things. And now you're like, well, you know what? We can deploy AI, and now we can do that. And I want to appreciate the stuff you were saying about copyright and agreements, but right now I just want to understand sort of the mechanics of what you're doing, and then we can talk about like some of how you came to these agreements with your licensing partners.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, kind of taking a walk back into how Factiva was cultivated and built and brought out to market. Factiva was created and was incorporated, if you will, as a joint venture. It was incorporated really back at the time when financial services was really growing into quantitative research next to qualitative research, right? And kind of to use it in the human and machine term, qualitative was a research analyst out there saying, I'm going to buy, sell, I'm going to do those things. And that was based on their information as a person. Quantitative, very much of, a model driven activity. So the Factiva joint venture at its launch was to say, we need to be able to, as a news industry, bring all of the information and make it available for the human in the loop or for the machine in the loop. And as we moved forward with Factiva, the AI that was really at the heart of Factiva's ecosystem, right? And when I say AI, that's the machine learning component, rules management, filter capabilities.
Right. This isn't the sort of surface layer where it's summarizing. This is like the real sort of information curation at the core of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is where you get data scientists and developers and all of the core of that.
Yeah.
So that fact that it was really built upon that, it was built with a mindset of a human is going to be interacting with all this content to create really robust searches, right? So we kind of take the search paradigm pre-AI. And that would, and I'm sure there's going to be younger listeners, I may say this, and younger listeners are going to be like, that's a what? But Boolean indicators and Boolean queries, really an advanced query of putting in all of the parameters that would include everything from relativity information, recency information, contextualizing information, talking about an apple as a company versus an apple as a fruit. All of those things would be Boolean operators as Factiva was growing up in the early days. And what we have also built alongside the technical deep query capabilities with the system was an expert service of humans that know all of the data that's going into Factiva, know all of the data that's coming out of Factiva, that can partner with our corporate clients to build expert searches, build specific queries. So it's definitely not as though Factiva has been or ever will be a specific curated set of information. It won't ever be a subset of the corpus. Our idea and our belief system, as it has been, as it is, and as it will always be, is that all of the information that we can provide is what we want to provide. How our customers choose to use it, leverage it, and make those critical business decisions off of it is what we strive for. So we have taken that same scenario as we've built the smart summary in our Gen AI. So a legacy kind of use case would be to go in and create the Boolean operators. You'd look at geopolitics, you would look at energy information, you would look at reputational risk or regulatory risk. All of those elements would be Boolean query enabled. They would be deep research. Now, what we've built in addition to that, all of that is still available. Now you can go in and ask it a question. Like I could ask you a question, what has been going on in the markets today? And now Factiva will offer you a response with federated content that has new Gen AI licensed content in it.
And just to stick with the features a little bit, is there a certain degree of personalization that this does, or even learning about sort of preferences or taking into account your own data? How does that work?
Well, in terms of the data that is delivered along our smart summary and how we're delivering and really um, going forward with Gen AI, we are very much agnostic in terms of data. We want to be delivering as much data that is relevant, that is recent, and that is contextually composed as possible. So we want to be delivering all content that includes any content that would be from Dow Jones and any content that we have within our corpus with our publishing and media partners. So it's everybody's in the mix, and that will always be that way. But from a personalization standpoint and how we can continue to deliver things like tone and preferences and that deep personalization, that is certainly on our roadmap as what we want to continue to do. Our initial foray was launching our smart summary, which is our Gen AI summarization. So we just launched that in November. So more will be coming.
Nice. Okay, so you come up with this great product. You're like, hey, we can do these summaries. We can make it so that you don't have to be a data scientist and create a whole equation of Boolean operators to get the things that you want. Sounds awesome. And now you're like, well, wait a minute, we need to talk to the publishers, right? And make sure this is because this is obviously new stuff. Obviously, wasn't in your contracts. You had, and you like you said, you had to go one by one on all of these. You mentioned earlier a word that I really want to double click on, which is it took some education for some of your partners. Can you walk me through maybe some of the issues that they had and how you had to sort of show them the value of this and how beneficial it could be to them? How did those go? Those people who might have been a little reluctant to sort of, I don't know, maybe I don't want my stuff ingested in your AI tools or whatever. How did you get them on board?
Well, I think that last bit that you just said was really where the starting point was, because AI was so new. It went from that exhilarating, exciting to, oh, I have anxiety. That it's a great idea, but oh, how do I apply it? I still need to run a business. I still need to make money. We still have journalists that are at the core of everything that we do. All of that was very much central to very early conversations that we had. But then at the same time, because we again have a very wide swath of publishers within our ecosystem, it also almost became a bit of an education on AI again in the very early days, right? Everybody was learning together. And when we were talking, I mean, RAG model, that wasn't in anyone's ethos or thought process, right? Retrieval augmented generation. It was a word that came up and was built. Agents was new, hoovering up data and hallucinations, all of these AI terms were very, very new. And then once it was a bit of an AI education, it did very much become of, okay, number one, how are you going to ensure that my content is secure? Right. I think
Mm,
that was one of the very central and early conversations that we had in earnest. And we were very, very excited to have it because this is where, too, us being in this business now for almost 3 decades, we have always been secure. We always put content at the core of what is in Factiva and secure delivery in the heart of how we promote and bring Factiva to market. So ensuring that we would be within a closed ecosystem, if you will, that there would not be any other content coming in that would wrap around or be making additional kind of assumptions within a summarization, et cetera. The content that is permissioned for Gen AI is the content that is delivered in our summarizations. And that's always going to continue. Only the Gen AI content licensed for Gen AI is going to be within our Gen AI tools, whether they are our tools or our data capabilities that will be powering with our Gen AI content. So it was really important to know, one, we were secure, right? And that you're not going to be sending the data elsewhere, all of those things. So there was this definitely the security component on the education. And then finally, it does come down to, well, this is all great. And we have been in a royalty ecosystem with you as part of Factiva. So how are we going to be compensated? Because if we're going to be doing something new, going to new places with new faces, how are we going to be? Does this mean we're going to be hopefully getting more compensation for it? And that was really the third education question, to speak to publishers that have been with us for quite some time, that are coming on in this new AI journey with us. how are we going to be compensating publishers? And we have had a very robust royalty structure for these nearly 3 decades we've been in business. And it's a royalty structure that has evolved and continued to develop and change over time as the industry has. And the fact that we're now able to introduce, as we have called it, new royalty moments
Mm.
within generative AI, that became a very positive contributing factor for publishers signing on.
I always love the royalty moment cards. Those are the best in the business. You got a great royalty moment. Now, okay, I want to actually zero in on both of those things and ask some stuff. So, first of all, the security question. Obviously very, very important to really everyone who uses AI. Honestly, it's an ongoing thing in the courses I teach in terms of making sure everyone understands what actually happens when you interact with an AI, particularly a public AI. Now, obviously, you're not a public chatbot. You have your own system. Walk me through the basic components of it. Do you have your own model, or are you using APIs? And what is your vendor relationship look like? I was reading that you are doing this through Google. Is that right, or is that your main partner? Tell me how you make sure everything is secure.
Sure, sure. So I think, from a Dow Jones perspective, let me kind of zoom out there and say that, from a Dow Jones perspective, data security, information security, identity security, cybersecurity. Again, those are driving principles for us from a technology landscape. And within that vein, anything that we're doing technically, we're looking at our best opportunities in terms of running things in house and how we would partner with best in breed technology organizations and sources and infrastructure externally. So, from a broad AI standpoint across Dow Jones, we want to be both model agnostic and we want to be cloud agnostic in terms of our AI delivery. Now, what that means is that we want to pick the best provider for any use case that we want to employ, any solution that we want to be driving from. For Factiva, we selected Google Gemini on Google Cloud for our enhanced semantic search, which is at the foundation of all the summarization tools. And we selected them primarily for their security. I remember when they came to me about probably a year and a half or a little bit more ago. Again, we're all in the learning curve, right? We go back to those days and you're like, what are you going to do? And I was not only talked to about security, I was very mindful and truly applaud them for also being as candid and transparent with us as I always intend to be with our publishers. They showed us a network architecture diagram. They showed us exactly how we would be having our infrastructure built in secure in the secure network our infrastructure that would be able to deliver everything that we needed for the full Factiva corpus of data. And now, keep in mind, when you talk about large technology players, et cetera, our search requirements are based off of, as I've said a few times, they're based off of relevancy, recency, and context, really those core drivers of semantic search. So we really wanted to have true search, right? We just wanted a very robust search capability. So that was point one. Point two was that our corpus of content, not only are we bringing in data on an ongoing daily basis, we have data within Factiva that dates back, I believe, to 1944 or maybe before. We have nearly 3 billion, with a B, articles in our Factiva archive. And all of that needed to be brought into the full corpus that we would be managing across our search, because our semantic search is powering both our generative AI summarization and our semantic search in our non-generative AI capabilities as well. So we needed a very strong partner to do that with. And Google has served and is serving a great partnership for us. And we will continue to make selections for future services based on who is going to be the best of breed provider for our specific needs.
Yeah, I'm sure the Google guy was like 3 billion, like, challenge us. Like we do the whole internet.
I,
Uh,
I gotta tell you, we can definitely validate this with our Google partners. At some point, they were like 3 with a B, and I'm like 3 with a B, and it took them a bit. So we were pretty proud of that as well. So
right, but I think as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you have obviously you have basically your version of Gemini running in your private cloud
you got
that
it.
you've tuned to your content.
You got
I might be using not quite the exact right terms, but I get it.
it.
But glad you said sort of you're agnostic about it. So there's no stance at all that you want something private as opposed to open source. But I guess I just put that question to you. Is there any reason you would be against an open source model?
Well, I can't speak for our CTO, so I kind of will put that
Mhm.
out there. But again, I'll just reiterate: best of breed solutions that are going to serve our needs, serve our customers, and ensure the intellectual privacy and property.
Got it. Got it. So let's talk about the second factor, and you all that when you talked about the royalties and the moments and all of that, and that sounds great. How do you do that exactly? I recently talked to someone from ProRata who I think in a sort of more open way because they do the whole they're doing their own sort of version of essentially searching publishers and getting them in their AI search. I think I'm putting that badly, but I think you know what I mean. And you have sort of this private version of that essentially, and so they had to build their own attribution system in a sense to make sure that they would know when a particular piece of content contributed to a generative answer, right? And is that essentially something you have done as well? Is that something that's more done on the Google end, and then they've shown you enough of their process that they trust that? And how do you then once you have that path determine like what is a fair royalty for whatever thing? Like is it like you have a generative answer? Is it 20% this one and 80% that one, or it could be sliced, the pie could be sliced a bunch of different ways. Is that kind of how it works? Like, can tell me like how the attribution and then the sort of monetization works on a generated summary?
Well, the attribution and the compensation from our publishing perspective operates really the same way that it has in Factiva for its nearly 3 decades, right? Our content licensing and our publisher licensing, both infrastructure from a royalty basis and from an actual delivery basis within the system, we've owned that space for nearly 3 decades. So, what others are trying to enter the space now, and we absolutely welcome that, and are going to be very excited to see what they're going to be able to offer. But our Factiva is grounded in our transparency, and we're ensuring our publishers know exactly how their content is being used, where it's being distributed, and how they're being compensated. So we definitely have a full and robust citation structure and a royalty and audit flow that has been part of the system since our inception.
Nice. Curious, do you? I imagine you do, but you have so many publishing partners. But there must be some holdouts, right? There must be a certain portion that are just like, okay, we don't want to be participating in this AI thing. And can you give me a rough kind of estimate of how many there are, or in terms of the proportion?
Well, what I will tell you is when we launched our Smart Summary in November, we had almost 4,000 publishers that were part of our Gen AI rights license corpus. And that had rapidly grown from just 2,000 sources, not even 6 months prior. So we
Hmm.
saw a very significant increase in velocity. We're now nearing 5,000 sources that are part of our Gen AI rights licensed content corpus. And what that really means is that is a portion of our overall content corpus. And we know 5,000 is going to continue to grow over time. But because Factiva has been in the attribution business, the citation business, and our royalty business since our inception, these same properties are applied to our Gen AI corpus as are applied to our full non Gen AI corpus. And so we know exactly who is permissioned for Gen AI content and who is not permissioned for Gen AI content. And we manage those royalty flows in separate streams, if you will.
And as this grows, and I guess usage of your smart summaries grows, I would imagine the sort of revenue you'd have a certain amount for, I don't know, I guess what you might call normal or non-generative or just the standard stuff. And then a certain portion of that must be attributable to these sort of royalty moments you talk about. And I imagine that whatever that portion is growing over time as well. Is that fair to say? For the people who are in the system. I don't know. I guess it's so new, maybe you don't know yet. I mean, it's just November and we're here, what is it, February? So.
Right, right. And look, we're seeing great numbers so far, which is, everything we can, want to see. But I think, if we kind of talk a little bit of kind of a look forward and kind of what would we anticipate going forward, the conversations that we continue to have is that, generative AI has moved, in my opinion, from the last even several months from a wish list would be amazing to be able to add to a component or a delivery to nearing table stakes and
Hmm.
start to make this kind of next leg in this AI journey together. Certainly the royalty moments for publishers that are going to be coming into an ecosystem with Gen AI rights and harnessing our collective convening power, those royalty moments are going to continue to accelerate over time. And what we continue to talk to publishers about that potentially are not ready to move, or potentially don't have the technical infrastructure themselves to move, is that we do know that we're probably going to start to see an incline of royalty moments for those that have said yes to permission, and a potential different path for those that haven't. So it's a constant conversation that we have. And as part of us from our community and our convening power, is that we continue to have conversations with publishers that both have agreed and those that haven't yet, to say this is what we're doing, this is where the market is going, and to make sure that we're fulfilling the responsibility that we feel to not only be a participant from a business standpoint, but be an industry participant as well, because it's a big part of what we do to ensure that journalists and institutions around the world understand what's going on in this world and understand that they're both protected and they're going to have advantageous revenue if they join us.
So one of the things we haven't talked about is simply the integrity of the information that is in the summary, because hallucinations are a reality. I often talk about the difference between a knowledge task and a language task, and it sounds like a lot of what you do is kind of more like a language. So there's probably fewer chances to hallucinate, but all these systems seem to do it some percentage of the time, right? How do you account for that? How do you deal with it? I could just tell me how you're dealing with hallucinations in these summaries if they're occurring.
Well, again, I'll reiterate that since our inception, right, the Factiva information is delivered in a transparent and trustful way. We want to be incredibly transparent, and we want to be incredibly mindful of the principles that we have. Right, we're only creating licensing deals too that we would sign ourselves, and because we bring our content to bear, it is with these, the three SEO principles: relevancy, recency, and context. We have no advertising. Nothing informs our readers of the research besides the trusted information that best supports their query. And the same remains true for our generative AI offering, right? We're source neutral. We provide information based on what is literally being asked, searched, and not by any preference to a publisher, right? And so that's exactly why we want to ensure that we're valuing all sources, not just from a licensing standpoint, but from a content delivery and servicing standpoint, whether they're large, small, niche, broad, all these sources are delivered. And we don't want to be capitalizing on one publisher in lieu of another. We really want to be delivering the answer to the question, no more, no less.
Right, but the answers, I think, in almost any Gen AI system sometimes just get muddled up. Sometimes something's wrong. Is there simply a disclaimer or disclosure? Hey, this is generative. It's kind of an experiment. Like, is that on your smart summary? Do you have that disclaimer? And do you have sort of a rough idea on sort of how often it hallucinates at this point?
Well, we definitely have the disclaimer. So I think that is an important point. We do note very directly that we have a Gen AI initiated summary. And I think that's really important for any user, whether we are a professional user or a consumer user, that you have it noted that this is a Gen AI initiated summary. It is also, certainly, we do have a disclaimer and we do have a deep explanation with probably more technical detail than a lot of our users would want in terms of how our search algorithm is built and the surfacing of information. So there's a lot of kind of robust analysis that goes around the search delivery. But keep in mind, this is also a search summarization tool that only uses the Gen AI licensed
Right.
sources that we bring into it. So it is a very closed ecosystem in that standpoint.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant with the language task thing. It's not going deep into its knowledge base. In fact, it sounds like it's explicitly forbidden from doing that. And then it can only deal with the information that you have. And that always sort of reduces the chance of hallucination. Um, that said, it's like obviously it's of great interest. This is a thing I think about and write about quite often because as AI gets more common in the real world, I do feel like people kind of get used to this idea, are more used to the idea of hallucination than they were. And I'm not. I think there are degrees, right? There was the whole thing with the Apple intelligence that happened a few weeks back, and they kind of had to pull the feature. So you can still have egregious errors that you need to address. But I also like this is the thing I'm observing just as a reality. I do feel like there's a little bit of tolerance building up among users of AI and that, oh, I get it. Yeah, I've got to actually check the thing. That said, I don't know if that's good or bad. It's not for me to say. It's kind of happening because that's the inherent nature of these systems. Okay, so just moving on, you talked a little bit about the roadmap a bit when I asked about personalization. Is there anything else that you've got plans for, either broadly or specifically with Factiva and how you can enhance its AI capabilities?
We've got lots and lots of plans, so I would tell everyone out there to stay tuned. This is going to be
Oh,
a
come on, you can do
very
better than stay tuned.
multi-part. I
You're doing
know,
agents, aren't you?
I
You're going to
know.
be a
Well,
Factiva agent you just chat with all the time.
I can neither confirm nor deny. So I think I will just say
Voice
this.
mode.
Exactly. I mean, I will just say this as our at Dow Jones, certainly Factiva is very much a capability that we leverage that is a product set externally. So there's lots of different things that Factiva has done for us, that does for us, and will be able to do for us and our clients. And the publishing community, obviously. But with really our core AI principles in mind, we are very, very mindful that we need to keep moving forward, right? AI is here to stay. It has become part of the consumer lexicon. And as soon as that starts to happen, we know that we need to be moving both quickly and ensuring that we are bringing forward things that we know are going to be important, not only to our users of today, but users of tomorrow. But we need to continue to do that in an IP respected way and in a highly secure way. So we're looking at a lot of different things that are coming online, and not only for Factiva. I would say, out there in the world, if anyone has not heard of Joanna Bot, and hopefully you listen to this and you'll hear it after today. One of our most amazing personal tech reporters at the Journal, Joanna Stern, she went ahead and created a Joanna Bot. So we're looking at conversational AI. We're looking at agents. So as you can imagine, the AI lingo that continues to come forward, we are without question looking at how we can best place ourselves, in the center of what our customers need.
Nice. And I'm just going to quickly sneak in a plug for myself since I interviewed Joanna back in the fall about Joanna Bot. And you can go back to the episode of the Media Copilot podcast that did a deep dive on that. It was good times. Traci, this has been great. How can people find out what you are doing online and check into more what Factiva is up to?
Oh, well, I have dowjones.com is absolutely the best place to go and to start. We have a lot of information there about Factiva, about Gen AI, and we're going to be bringing up even more information as we go along. So I would say keep checking dowjones.com. We've got a robust presence out there on LinkedIn and all the socials as well. So you can take a look for me, for Factiva, for Dow Jones, but we would love any interaction that everybody wants. The more information that we get back is the best for us.
Appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Factiva's Traci Mabrey. If you like what you heard, please just take a minute to leave a rating or review for the Media Copilot in your podcast app. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Media Copilot newsletter and check out MediaCopilot.ai for our classes on AI for journalists, PR professionals, and communicators. Seeing you in the future.